Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Counterpoints podcast. My name is Malik Foster. I'm one of your co-hosts today, and I'm joined by my other co-hosts. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
What's going on, everyone? I'm Everett Stevenson. I'm also co-host of the Counterpoints podcast.
Hey everybody, I'm your third co-host, Samantha Adams, and today we have a really interesting topic. I know we say that every week, but every week we have an interesting topic. But this week we're going to be talking about the experimentation on Black people in the USA specifically. What prompted this was I saw a clip on social media, I think it was. We're going to show the clip later on in the show, but I saw a clip and it really just triggered a thought for me. And I brought it to the guys and we decided, hey, why don't we just go ahead and have a discussion about it, right? And it's mostly about how throughout history, Black people have been used as lab rats, so to speak, and so we just wanted to dive right into it. I guess I'll kick it off with the historical aspects of it. So I'm pretty sure it's happened way more than we ever know about, and it's been broadcasted or put out there. But if you go back as far as slavery, right, there was a doctor out there. His name was Dr. Sims. Dr. Sims was actually a gynecologist. And what he used to do was he used to use Black women, the enslaved Black women, as guinea pigs. And he would do that. He also discovered is probably not the right word. He created the speculum. I think that's what you call it. Yeah, the speculum, where they use it to, help when they're doing exams on women today. However, they used to use, he used to do these different experiments on Black women because it wasn't really allowed. And he didn't use anesthesia or anything like that, which also goes to the myth that Black people don't feel pain the same way as everybody else, or we have a higher tolerance for pain. And it's a myth, it's not true. And a lot of times what happens is when Black women, even today, go to the hospital, let's say to have a baby, you see the Black mortality rate in childbirth much higher amongst Black women, because oftentimes they don't treat Black women as if they're feeling pain. They're not taking what they're saying very seriously, things like that. So I just wanted to kind of kick it off right there. Let you guys go ahead and dive in, comment, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, on that topic, I definitely thought that was it's bittersweet, I think, in relations to that situation, because again, I know a lot of good did come from those studies, but at the same time, it happened at like such a in such a heinous way in order for that information to get there. So that's something I definitely thought of. Okay, so yeah, that's what I had with that.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say to echo some of the points you made about the medical situation with Black people and specifically Black women. When it comes to Black people don't get the same adequate care. All sorts of things happen. So that's a good point that you brought up with everything that's going on and why we're even having this conversation, right? Because of some things. I know we have a clip that we're going to show you guys soon, but we kind of want to get into some more of the brief history and some of the examples that we have to just let people be more aware of the situations that happened in the past, right? So I know one of the first examples that people probably well know about is the Tuskegee Experiment. people already kind of know about that. They were experimenting on Black people with syphilis. I don't know if there was any other type of sexually transmitted diseases or any type of diseases that they were
Not
trying
with,
to.
not with the Tuskegee experiment. Doesn't mean that there weren't other experiments, though.
Right. There was other things they were doing, but that's the main thing everybody knows about is that aspect of it. Because I believe that it was y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but there were some things going around, and I believe they even offered some sort of money. I forgot the number for people to go get these shots and go get, vaccinated or whatever they were trying to label it as, in exchange for this
You talking
testing.
about how they lured the Tuskegee
Yeah,
Tuskegee. Yeah, I think it was honestly, I think it was like the flu or something like that. It was like something real common, something real regular, like, hey, we're tracking the flu, so we're gonna give you a vaccine for the flu so we can, and what they did was they targeted Black areas, and based on whatever the contract was, if I'm not mistaken, it was that's why they went to Tuskegee. And so what they did was they gave out vaccines to people, but with 40 men that were at Tuskegee University, they gave them syphilis, and they tracked them for the next, I don't know how many years, to watch to see what happened, and didn't tell them that they were being given syphilis. So that's essentially how that happened.
Well, it was more than 40 in particular. I think I just looked at some statistics saying that there was roughly around 399 men that participated, with around 201 of which who were not impacted with the disease. One of the mentioned was that they're looking to try to monitor for blood pressure, things of that nature, but instead it turned out to be a case study for syphilis in particular. And one other thing that came about from that was that there was a recognition from Congress about the study and a settlement that was reached. So in 1973, they had a hearing about the Tuskegee Experiment, in which they said that the participants who all participated in that study was able to have access to a $10 million out-of-court settlement for those subjects and the families of their subjects, subjects of that experiment. And that was, a government-sponsored activity. So that's just examples of which, not necessarily just in a private healthcare facility, but, times in which we've seen that, government actors who may have acted, or who not may, but acted with ill intent towards Black individuals in this country. And so, as we see it, and as we're looking forward to talk about today, how that seems to be a common theme around the world, and not necessarily just America, but it has some roots here as well. So that's all I wanted to add on to that.
Yeah, this is an example of them targeting Black men, right? Black men have always been targeted. I know this conversation sparked by a clip of targeting Black women, but this is just an instance of them targeting Black men, and also the fact that as Everett was alluding to and explaining, he was saying that it was over hundreds of people that had to participate in this experiment. So we can only imagine what other stuff may have happened even before that, right? Of course, during antebellum period, slavery, all that stuff, what kind of things they were doing to just test stuff. So, and we could see even not too long ago, right? Some people are still alive from that time. It's not like, oh, there's only one or two people alive from that time period, but people are still alive from that time period to know what, the government is doing. So it's not just private entities, right, or private individuals, but just even the government itself. So it's even more reason to, have that argument like, hey, black people deserve reparations. Like the government was targeting us, not just like private individuals. So that's something to, keep your eyes look at it in a way, to think about it in a different way. Like, man, even the government's like targeting these individuals with disease, not just depriving us of like education, other stuff, but actually targeting black people from an experimental standpoint.
Right. The other part about that is too, like, aside from that, like, these are the people that got caught. These are the times people were caught, right? And I think that it's important to recognize, like, a lot of times things happen and happen and happen before people get caught. You hear stories about how during the Vietnam War they were doing experiments on some of our Black soldiers, right? And a lot of times when people start talking, especially when Black folks, let me clarify what I'm saying. A lot of times when you hear Black folks talking about the fact that they're being targeted, or talking about the fact that they're being mistreated, or something is amiss, a lot of times that doesn't come from nowhere. That doesn't come from just some random conspiracy theory or grave suspicion. Like, there's an actual history of the government, of, even private entities doing people this way, right? And so when people are suspicious, it comes from a real place. And I think that it's important to recognize that, right? So that leads us into another example, right? There was a woman back in the day, her name's Henrietta Lacks, right? And she had something that was called an immortal gene. Now, Miss Lacks had cancer. And when they found she had some special type of a gene, they pretty much took her DNA. And they also took the DNA of her children, were doing experiments on her children and things like that. And they used it. And they used that DNA to create a drug that you often hear about called hydroxyurea. And they took it without her consent or knowledge. And when they later found out what was going on, I believe her family was awarded some money, right? But it still happened. And I think a lot of these things come from, and you guys chime in whenever you're ready, but I think a lot of this comes from also too, it said that the Black person is the original person, right? The Black man is the original man. The Black woman is the original woman. You have the quote unquote Eve gene, right? And so all people are derived from Black folks. And as a result, our DNA is slightly different. And it's something that people sought, that it is still to this day sought after in order to find ways to help, fix the problems that go on medically within, society. And when I say society, I don't mean like just the Black community or here in America. I mean like worldwide, because we have that original man and original woman type gene. So they do these experiments and take DNA just so that they can try to find ways to fix problems and save others, but treat us as though we don't matter, like we are, like I said before, lab rats and guinea pigs. Anybody want to chime in about that?
Yeah, I'll chime in here. Like, so with the Henrietta Lacks situation, it's kind of like you kind of explained the history, but I just wanted to add on, like, okay, this is where, like they were willing to invade, Black people's rights and just treat them as, animals, right? You know how you place maybe one of the animals, you find an animal, it's a unique characteristic, you want to study the animal, you do stuff like that, but they're not animals, they're people, right? So even nowadays, right, they don't even want people to even test like on the animals and stuff like that, because of certain organizations applying political pressure. But we're even getting less treatment than that, right? We're seeing examples of that instance. So I know we have a clip that we're going to get into. I think we're going to pull it up shortly, but just from my point of concluding on the Henrietta Lacks situation. It's kind of crazy that they just invaded her body like that, and then just invaded her children as well. So
Especially
because
she was sick, right?
what did you say?
I said especially too because she was sick. She had cancer at the time.
Right. She did die young, but they just noticed like, okay, because I think she died at like 31 or something, but like an early age, but in her 30s, early 30s. But the fact was that she had those special cells. They found out like, oh, okay, she's dead, but the cells are still like alive. So yeah, you can go ahead and play the clip.
So pretty much right now, what we're about to watch is another clip of Billionaire Peter. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. As well as one of his business partners, I believe some scientists who were speaking to a group of women within the diaspora. I don't necessarily know if they're Black American or if they were African descent. And I guess you could say giving praise to their unique genetics, but also creepily, asking them to be test subjects, looking to get that consent that we said that Mrs. Leaks wasn't awarded again. So here's this clip, and we'll talk about it here momentarily.
Stem cell technology that Peter and I are investing in is called SCNT, which takes the egg of a young, perfect woman specimen, takes the egg and takes out the nucleus and puts our DNA in the nucleus. They just go ahead and take it out. And this is part of this genetic greatness that we don't see in any other race on the planet. These curvy, sexy Black women from Africa. Negroes have a kind of a monopoly on this genetic perfection, and we want some of that. So, girls, for $100, we will pay you for your egg. $100? So how much do you want for it? Let's bid. I bid $500 for you. He's gonna outbid me. $60,000 of eggs. Yeah. If you have an abortion, that's very valuable. Umbilical cord, placenta. Your period blood is so rich with stem cells. You're guarded.
So, yeah, I just want to kind of get that clip in. I think it's like a couple things that you can just see within that talk and that conversation. Like the cringiness that speaks out mostly is like the looks on the young ladies' faces when they kind of like understand, like, because they have a dear understanding of essentially like how they're being objectified in that situation, as far as just looking at being looked up as a specimen of ideal DNA, but like not looked as people, right? Like not looked up as individual women who have their own thoughts and feelings and conversations. At first you could look at the one lady, are y'all paying that little comment. And then after that, then to see how, I guess you could say he was jokingly making a statement, but he starts off, $100 an egg, or, okay, well then 500 or whatever the case may be, almost like they're watching themselves get bidded on for one of their most valuable, possessions as women. And so that was like one of the biggest things that spoke out outside of just, again, the context of what they were actually discussing, which, was the stem cells of these women and being able to have the ideal prototype, I guess, body from the type of woman that they would want to have it from, to create the, I guess, genome pool that they would like to have. Yeah, so I'll let you guys go into it and see what y'all talked about as well or saw from it.
Yeah, I thought it was degrading as I don't know what, because it's like, first of all, the girl in the yellow is the one who stood out the most to me. Because first of all, she seemed as though she was halfway paying attention while he was talking about it. But then you kind of get the feel that no, she's actually she's paying proper attention to what he's saying. She's just not with it, right? Because he's talking about, oh yeah, we'll give you $100, and she's looking like, what? Like, why are we here? She looks incredibly uncomfortable. As a matter of fact, all of them look kind of uncomfortable, right? The one that also stands out to me is a young lady right next to her. The reason why she stands out is because it's almost like, pardon me, I don't know if she's like just trying to egg it on, or if she's just like, oh yeah, fake being interested, or if she has a genuine interest, right? I found it to be degrading and very frustrating to watch as a woman, because like you said, he's almost like making a joke about bidding on one of the most precious thing a woman has, right? It's a part of her womanhood, her ability to create and create life. And it goes to the very thing that I was just talking about Black women having the Eve gene, right? Because remember, he said, Black women monopolize off of this particular thing, and that is the Eve gene. That is the fact that she's supposed to be the original woman, and there's a portion of the genetics of a Black woman and the DNA of a Black woman that nobody else has. And so they're trying to capitalize off of that so that they can pretty much, find new cures and do all this other stuff. But rather than allowing women to presenting the proposal in a business savvy way, he's like making light of it because, who cares? Just go ahead and give us an egg. We'll give you like $100. Mind you, if you want to freeze your eggs today, as a woman, I don't care what your race is, it costs at least 10 racks. And that's to just freeze some eggs. That's not even to give it away, right? So I think it's like $100. Why would you think $100 or even $500 is enough? Even if you're joking, you don't play like that, right? Like imagine if the role was reversed and a Black woman was asking a white man for his left testicle. Like, I mean, I know that sounds graphic, but he ain't gonna be with that. You see what I'm saying? No, I'll give you $100 for it. Like, what? Like, why, where is that funny, right? Where is that funny? And shout out to WorldStar for capturing that. They're the ones that we got that link from. It was from WorldStar and it was also on YouTube.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's very disturbing what they're trying to do here, injecting their DNA into another group of people. Obviously there's the money component, right? Like obviously he's joking about the money and stuff like that. They're trying to do it in a jokingly way, but at the end of the day, they were serious. They really want to make this happen. And I think the guy mentioned even eventually like $6,000 or something, like a more substantial offer. But at the end of the day, these women shouldn't even be at that meeting, right? They shouldn't even entertain this because it's kind of like on that eugenics stuff. Like, yeah, we're trying to, save the white race type of, that stuff that's out there, which it does have some validity, right? A lot of people think like that. Like some people that come to my mind is like Richard Spencer, some of these white supremacists. So that's like a red flag for some white supremacist activity. Like, okay, they're willing to, especially when it comes to Black women, they're willing to talk to them, do anything when it comes to the procreation part. But like, what are they doing to actually benefit the people? Because this doesn't benefit Black women at all. This is completely off code, if you ask me. So them even attending is wrong in the first place. Like, what do you need to attend that? Just for a little bit of cash? Like, it's not even life-changing cash. So this brings up to my mind like instances of even potential coons behavior, right? Where like you're selling your people out or you're selling yourself out and going off code just for little money, right? It's not even that much. It's not world-changing money, life-changing money. And that's some of the issues we do have in our community. And that's what I'm like taking from it, besides all of the, eugenic stuff that those white male individuals were proposing. But from the black female side, I think them just being there is just completely off code and just completely off topic. Like they should be focusing on like, okay, how is this benefiting us? Like, why are you trying to inject our DNA? Since you're in the meeting, you shouldn't even be there. But like you know, so I know. What do you think, Guinea?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not them. I don't know necessarily, what what I'm saying, their state of mind was, but I tend to think, just based off of some of my experiences, I would imagine that they just kind of looked at this situation as they were all going out to have dinner with some dude who was a billionaire and his rich friend, and the conversation just went left. It probably was like, hey, we got cameras, Bate Sweet, you know what I'm saying? Would you ladies like to come out? And, women being typical women in some regards, especially, women that may have some attraction to them, and assuming like this is just part of their life. Like, hey, guys should, especially these older guys, come through with the dinner, come through with the ride, you know what I'm saying? Come through with all the things that you need to do in order for me to even want to engage in having a conversation with you. And so for those purposes, I feel like that's how the game came down to. And that's probably why they were there. I'm certainly sure that they didn't know that conversation was going to go there, just because of the looks on their faces. Like, when it started to happen, like it wasn't like okay, now we here to talk about the business now. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of like oh, all right, we going out, we having dinner, we chilling. Okay, he rich as hell, so he got somebody just filming because that's just his lifestyle, whatever. Blah 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 blah, and then it went to the real reasoning why they selected you or why you were chosen, and you start to see that it was more than just the superficial beauty standard. It was more so like, not only are you, you're young and you're beautiful, but you're sitting on something that's very valuable that, that you might not, value as much as we would like to. And so they were trying to see, and they had the conversation that they had. So, while I don't necessarily think that it's necessarily a code issue for me, but I do think that it's one that we have to look at to say, and I think that's why we had the conversations that we had, 2 weeks ago, in regards to, young ladies understanding what you really dealing with sometimes when it comes to dealing with gentlemen, especially gentlemen of an older age, and you're young and attractive and you got something going for yourself. I think a lot of women do kind of understand that and they're willing to roll with it, but for others, it's like, maybe they don't know what comes with the game, so you have to kind of give it to them so that they don't have to get exposed to it when they're in the moment.
I agree, but there's a couple things you said that I disagree with a little bit there, E. Like, women being women, them just going there. We don't know what attracted them to that situation. They could have already been at the restaurant, right? They could have just been hanging out, and them dudes just happened upon them with their cameras and was like, hey, we're filming the show. Do you mind if we sit down with y'all and have a conversation? Could have been that. Could have been, hey, they met out somewhere and then they were all invited out to come eat, right? It could have been many, many things. And if you're talking about us going to a restaurant and food, people don't turn down free food now. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think there's a lot of different what ifs, variables as far as how they found themselves in that situation. I agree to a degree with Malik as it relates to them they shouldn't have been there. But if it was a situation where they didn't know that the conversation was going to take that type of a turn, then you understand how it happened and how they ended up there, right? But at the same time, everything that man said was not okay as far as I'm concerned. I didn't like none of it. And that's why I talked about the young lady in the yellow, because you could see the discomfort in her face more than you can see everybody else's. And it's almost like you can see her looking around the table like, are y'all really okay with this? Like, to me, and I could be wrong, I could just be reading the situation wrong, but it just to me would seem like she looked like she was like, if this conversation doesn't end, I'm leaving, right? This is uncomfortable. One thing that I did recognize is that a number of those young ladies appeared to be uncomfortable. It was cringy. Like the whole conversation was cringy. It was coming from a guy who was kind of talking like a creep, like, oh yeah, your sexy curves and da 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 da. And they're all looking like, what? Why? What is going on? Like, you know what I mean? And so I think, and you're talking about DNA, but you're talking about it like, oh, for your physique. Like, no, that's not what you want the DNA for. It ain't about nobody's physique. You can buy a physique today. You know what I'm saying? It's more so about you want that DNA for the things that you could do, like they did with Henrietta Weeks.
Yeah,
you know what
yeah,
I mean?
it's like a fetish type of thing, Sam. It'd be different if they say, "Hey, we're noticing some issues in Caucasian ethnic groups. We could really use your help in terms of doing some type of experiment to see if that can help with some of the issues in the Caucasian group." It's the approach, right? The way they're approaching is like, oh, okay, you guys look at your bodies. We need some of that. Like it's all fetish type of stuff. So that's the way to put it. Because if you're trying to actually be earnest in what you're doing, you would present in a different way instead of like that old creepy pervy way, like you were saying. You know what I'm saying? Because he's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, it was like, ooh.
Some of that. We need some of that, like, wow, really? So, I mean, that's all I have on that situation. I know we kind of wanted to get into some of the other stuff.
Yeah. Well, no, there was one other thing I wanted to talk about
Okay.
before we get into talking about like how we can avoid these types of things. COVID is another great example, right? I don't know how many of you guys remember, but at the start of COVID, when COVID was spreading quickly throughout the world, they didn't have that many cases in Africa. And so you saw, I believe, and please forgive me if I'm wrong, I think it was a French doctor or British doctor or both. But they were suggesting, and also too, they claim Bill Gates, right? Were all trying to find ways to get COVID into Africa so that they could study Africans.
Well, they wanted to, I know that for a fact, they wanted to test the vaccine there.
Right. They absolutely wanted to do that. But I think they wanted to also do case studies on COVID to see how it responded, because in the beginning, Black people weren't really getting COVID like that. Right. It was mostly everybody else. And so if y'all remember, a lot of us was out here making jokes like, oh, well, we Black, we can't get it. You know what I mean? And then next thing you know, Black folks started getting it. And it was only like a few people in one country in Africa that had it, and it was Northern Africa, before it started to really like get in there. But they really wanted to just use Black people in Africa as guinea pigs, just to test out COVID, see how the body responds. I think what they really wanted to see was whether or not our DNA was immune to it, right? Because we have a different structure of DNA, hence this whole conversation. And then also to test the vaccine to see if they can find a cure as quickly as possible, because we have special DNA. You guys, you're on air, mute.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that was another example in which, and kudos to the leaders of those nations who were like, no, we straight. We don't need, we don't want it. We don't need it. We've been able to manage everything that we have going on here. I don't know if they said this, but probably been like, why don't you send this over to another country? You know what I'm saying? Which we believe that the disease may have originally came or was contracted from. So like I said, man, it seems to be a theme that we see over and over again whenever there's a issue, you know, like let's go, which is one of the reasons why I think that, and I fought to have this show named, you know what I'm saying? The ideal, or like, you know, like the perfect specimen, because I truly believe that, you know, when we look at how, you know, when we look at how scientists have looked at, you know, black bodies in particular, and the way that they studied them, the way that they admired and measured since early time frames, and just kind of looked at us to be, you know, not necessarily so much human, but like this to study human, like to study us from the standpoint of genes. And sometimes some people feel like you see it even in like the NFL and stuff like that with the combine. You know what I'm saying? Where you got guys that go and they run as fast as they can. They try to go catch balls and things of this nature. They lift as hard as they can. And it gives like that vibe because you just see old white guys who are, you know, typically the people who are ahead of teams or in team management, you know, looking over, scaling their stuff, watching all of these people, and not necessarily all these people, but again, a lot of young Black athletes who are coming from a lot of inner city type of situations, looking for opportunities to change their lives. You know, the difference from that and, you know, slavery was you didn't necessarily get paid, but not but, because there's a big difference in those two things. I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying that they're equivalent. However, I'm referring to just the process of, you know, the combine and the measurements and the way that people kind of look to invest in and their assets of, you know, NBA, NFL stars, in comparison to maybe the same way that slave owners may have looked at other slaves when they were coming off on auctioning blocks. So, yeah, that's something.
Yeah, I'll say with the COVID situation, it was kind of weird and very suspicious at the time that they wanted to actually do some of that testing in Africa and African countries, and it's kind of good that it didn't go into fruition, but still, it's like it kind of leads us into why target Black people, and especially Black Americans here in this country as well. We're always targeted, even with the monkeypox situation, right? That's coming out that you know, they're trying to say Black and Hispanic people are you know, it's catching the most. It's because they're the most vulnerable, right? They can't get the best treatments. But I feel like everybody is susceptible to it, but Black people are vulnerable because, you know, the type of jobs they do, right? You know, typically with a lot of people interacting, people to people type of jobs, it's not so much office work or CEO work or small corporation or like a big corporation work, but like, you know, companies like Walmart, theme parks, like where they employ large groups of people. That's typically the kind of jobs Black people as a group are doing, right? Like blue collar type of work, not white collar work, typically, right? But not saying that there's no Black people doing white collar work. So that's another thing that's coming out because I saw an article about that Black and brown people are more susceptible to monkeypox, but hey, they say a whole bunch of stuff, right? They even get our population wrong, right? They always saying we're only like 12, 13% of the population, but more like 17, 20%, right? So that there was an article that came out about that. Even when everybody doesn't follow the census, of course you account for like an error. There's always that error percentage, but still, that's just another example of them just, you know, always trying to miscalculate and undermine Black Americans specifically here in this country. So, what are some of the reasons y'all think they target Black Americans with some of these things? Because I'll name mine real quick and then I'll let y'all go. I think because we're the most vulnerable group in this country, right? In terms of like our money, right? We don't own and control much of anything. So that's an issue. So they're able to leverage their power against our lack or little power that we have. And also that we're that we haven't built any communities. We're just in these neighborhoods isolated, and we don't have any structure and foundation in place to protect ourselves from these type of situations. So those are some of the reasons I can think of. Also, lastly, there's a historical precedent set out for this stuff. So that's why I think they target Black Americans here in this country.
Yeah, well, in reference to some of the things that I was just saying a little bit earlier, in the show, again, I think is that some of the things that I agree with what you just stated, Malik, but also the fact that, again, they know, like, Sam mentioned it earlier as well, the original man came from, an African man and woman. So knowing that, that's where history kind of began and started from, knowing the legacy that's in the power that's within that. It's kind of like, you want to kind of look into that. I think another reason is too that you just said was just that, there's a lot of times a lack of I don't want to say accountability, but they won't be necessarily held accountable for their actions. So I think sometimes people in the field feel like, that these are, in words that you just said, some of the most vulnerable of races, because they may not necessarily have the type of unity that we need in the legislative power. We may not have the type of unity that we need in the judicial branch. We may not have the type of unity that we need, overall in places of power that are needed in the enforcement and law enforcement type of agencies to try to make the system more balanced and in regards to the treatment of all. So those are just like, again, the reasons why I think that you kind of see that people do those things is very shocking, because you'll see it happen time and time again. I think we've all seen it within our own lives. You just be living your life and you'll see for yourself how, but for the fact that people may not know that you may be an attorney, they'll try to get over on something that clearly is illegal. I don't know, we've all probably dealt with that situation multiple times, or they might have did it to someone that's in our part of your family who they didn't think would know the law or know rules that apply to the law. And they just so used to just getting over like that, sometimes they don't necessarily understand where it'll fly and where it won't. And I guess that's the curse of having knowledge, is that then you kind of you can start to see where certain things that shouldn't be done are being done, and just how frequent that happens. Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, so I wanted to just piggyback off of what both of y'all said. And honestly, what I was going to add to what Malik said, that you kind of started touching on, that is, aside from just the vulnerability, it's the lack of education, right? I think that if we don't know what people are trying to do, we don't know when it's happening, right? If you have no idea what to look for, you don't know that it's happening in real time right now, right then and there in front of your face, and it's happening to you. So I think, that right there plays a huge part in our vulnerabilities. One of the reasons why we're vulnerable, right? So like, we could sit here all day because we've talked about it ad nauseum about, the financial, ruins, essentially. Well, I don't want to say ruins. I think that might be a little dramatic, but the lack of funds Black folks have as a whole, right? The lack of investments Black folks have as a whole, the lack of protections that we have legally for Black folks as a whole. And then there's not even a lot of policy even to help protect Black people, including when you're talking about in the medical field, right? Especially, a lot of times people don't recognize this, but Black women, Black hospitals and doctors for Black women are almost an equivalent to police for Black men, right? Because Black women go into the hospital all the time and don't come out. And a lot of that has to do with them not being heard. Like, if you can have a Black woman and a white woman walk into the hospital, have the exact same problem, exact same symptoms, and that white woman walks out and that Black woman doesn't, because nobody heard her. Hospitals for Black women often are places where they go unheard. And I believe that, doing these experiments and all this other stuff is, I think it's kind of heinous. If you give somebody an opportunity to do something, they're more inclined to do it as long as they know what they're signing up for, right? But when you start robbing people of the opportunity to know what they're getting themselves into, then I think that, it makes people more suspicious and less likely to want to get involved. So I think, solutions wise, right? How do you fix all of this, right? And so I'm just going to work backwards. Educate, right? Educate the people, right? Create policies and legislation that'll help, protect folks, things like that. Like there's a lot of things, and I know E and Malik probably have some ideas too as far as solutions are concerned, but I do think that those right there are some of the main ones. But one of the ones I definitely wanted to talk about is talking to your family, right? Educating your family, passing it on. Back in Africa, back in the day, I don't know if they still had them, they had people called griots. Griots would go from village to village telling stories about history and the past, and that's how people knew their historical line and things like that, right? And they knew about the different things that took place in not only their tribe, but in their land, in their country, amongst different tribes, because griots would go from place to place and tell these stories. And sometimes, when we talk about education, that's what we mean. Like sometimes you have to be the griot. You can't expect the schools and, the education system to teach your children everything. You have to show them, because especially nowadays, especially when you got critical race theory, they don't even want people to know that slavery happened or try to dumb it down and make it seem like it wasn't the original sin and it wasn't one of the worst things that could happen to a people in the world. Like I'm not even going to say in this country, but in the world. And how, when we talk about reparations, this is why, right? Because not only the reason why I believe we haven't gotten reparations is because as a whole, I don't mean like just in California, but as a whole, is because I believe that they're not finished using us yet. They're not ready to repair us because they're not done using us. And I think that, us really having a full understanding of what's going on and just continuing to teach our children generationally so we know what to look for and how to avoid it. And like he said, just be up on game, because like you said, there's plenty of times people will think they can pull one over on you. And in a minute, especially us, we're all lawyers. There have definitely been times they'll try to pull that and you're just like, oh, okay. So let me just tell you right quick that I'm a lawyer. So I'm pretty sure that that's not legal, or I'm pretty sure my law degree or my law license tells me otherwise, right? And then that people start fumbling, backpedaling, and talking in circles because then now they realize, oops, right? They tried to get you and you're like, nope, sorry, I'm not the one. And so, I think that it's important that we make sure that we find ways to protect ourselves, arm ourselves with knowledge, and find ways to get ourselves out of that less vulnerable group. And I think that would help. You're on mute.
I agree. I think that again, us being able to be more educated onto certain issues, about consent, us being aware of, our place in this world, period, like as far as understanding, the history of our genes and the power that comes within that. I think that also help. And then us being able to create a community, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we created this whole show, was just to talk about how, community is needed. Every week we come in and we address certain issues that we see in society, or things, or maybe shed light on certain things that we think that are positive that's going on in society, which I feel like we don't necessarily always find enough of in the day-to-day world. But the overall understanding and the solution for that is us having that community, us being able to have that space. And then one thing that I think that the internet has granted us is the ability for us to be able to find spaces where individuals who share like-minded thoughts and ideas are able to share those things. And I think, if you guys are checking this show out, that you're one of those individuals who are tapped into, looking to do positive things and provide positive energy for that community. But Along with that, I think one of the biggest things outside of just legislation is, again, enforcement for the courts and for the policemen and for all parties involved to have that enforcement, for there not to be a presumption of guilty until proven innocence for Black people, for there to be an understanding that hey, that this is a certain that you should treat us just as like you would treat any other citizen. And I think that goes for, again, with any type of experiments that people are trying to do on us, or any type of interactions that people may have with us. And so those are the things that I think that needs to happen in order for us to kind of get there.
Yeah, I like everything that everybody said. Legislation for sure. To protect us, be a protected class. Reparations, of course, that's falls under legislation. Education, of course, everybody needs to be educated on the historical impacts and the historical things that have happened in the past, so we can prevent those type of bad things from happening in the future. And like Ever mentioned, community, right? Building up a community, building up that structure and foundation to have some sort of protection, right? So I think those are all the solutions I agree with. I don't have anything new to add on to what my co-hosts were saying, but so that's it for solutions. I do want to segue us into our Black business of the month, which is the Sister Shop, thesistershop.com. It's a Black-owned business. They have 2 locations and also an online store. The first location is in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and then the second location is out here in Atlanta, Georgia, down Lang Station. So you have to be sure to check them out. So they sell all kinds of Black-owned products. You can register your business with them and sell your products like body creams, lotions, all kinds of stuff. So it's a good Black-owned business. It primarily focuses on Black women, entrepreneurs, and stuff like that. So we definitely need good, strong Black women entrepreneurs as well. So that's the reason why I chose them as my Black business of the month. I stopped by there last month, so I recognize the place and I wanted to shout them out. And then the book of the month is right here. This is the book, The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. I know it's not a Black person that wrote it, but I feel like it's a good self-help book. I'm all about self-help, and you want to 10X your life. It's kind of an important book for me. I even got a 10X hat, right? So I'm trying to improve my life 10 times out here. And as far as the motivational minute goes, I have a quick quote here that I want to read to you guys and then just explain a little bit. So the quote is here: great minds have purposes, others have wishes. So, and that's by Washington Irving. And that quote really spoke to me because, I'm trying to be on my purpose. And I know a lot of people just, I wish this, wish that, but they're not taking those action steps to achieve their goals and dreams. So it really spoke to me because I just realized how many people just are just wishing for stuff, but not being on their purpose. So that's the motivational minute that I have for you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in this week. We'll upload every Saturday, 1 p.m. Y'all can check out the premiere of the videos. Y'all can check out our past videos. If y'all want us to talk about a different topic, you can DM us, email us, contact us. Our socials will be in the description down below. Like, comment, share, tell a friend. And you can follow us on Instagram at Counterpoise Podcast and on Facebook as well. We're on there as well. So y'all guys have anything else to add before we close out?
Don't forget to subscribe.
Yeah, keep y'all next week. That's all I got for y'all.
See y'all Wednesday Wednesday. Make sure you join us every Wednesday too. We have our What's Up Wednesday segment live on Instagram at Wednesday, 8:30-ish p.m. So other than that, see ya.
All right, guys. Peace.